In this video, I'm going to run through doing part 2 of the AAT Diploma Synoptic Assessment Practice Assessment 2. So I'm already at task 2.1 and I have downloaded the assessment book and data, which is the Excel workbook, and I've also separately downloaded the PDF instructions. You don't have to do that. You can get all of the instructions from the workbook, so it's entirely up to you if you want to do that or not. I'm going to leave the exam environment now. I don't need it until I've completed my Excel tasks, and then I'm going to return to this area here and I'm going to use the upload to upload my marks. Interestingly, if we just have a little look here, we've got 4 parts to the task and 11 marks are available for part D. So that might be an area we could focus on first. That's your choice, but just be aware of how many marks are available for each section. So here we are in the workbook, and the first sheet you see here, we have the assessment tasks, and we can use this to flick between the data and the assessment tasks. Now I also tend to download the PDF as well, but I have just noticed a difference between the two. So if you have a look at the PDF instructions, you'll notice it goes straight from today's date and into tasks. However, if I look at the Excel instructions, it goes from today's date and then gives me instructions on exactly what I'm supposed to be calling my file before I upload it. And this is important. So if you're not seeing that information in the PDF, then I recommend you double check your Excel assessment tasks. Now, I don't intend to read out all of the instructions, so I suggest you get a copy of this paper next to you so you can read the instructions therein. We're starting on the 20X worksheet, and we've got to complete the pro forma for the current budgeted New Places current budgeted net profit loss for 6 months. Let's have a go at doing that. So what I need to work out is down here, I'm going to do my net profit, and we have all the information necessary to be able to build this net profit loss calculation. So we're going to start by bringing down the sales volume in units. So all I'm going to use is a simple equals. So I'm going to say that the sales is going to be the sales volume, the budgeted sales volume, multiplied by the average cost per unit, the average selling price per unit, and then we get the budgeted selling price. Now I've got my cost of sale here, so let's just use this column to do a subtotal. So the cost of goods for resale is going to be the number of units multiplied by the cost per unit. We go, and that's the only one we're using, so what we'll do is we'll just bring that value across to our main calculation, and that allows me to work out my gross profit, which is going to be my sales revenue less my cost of goods for resale. So there's my net profit calculated, and now we need to work out the expenses. So we've got some fixed overheads over here, and you can see that we have got that information above. So all I'm going to do is just in here use an equal sign, and starting on the wages for the shop, I'm going to bring that down, and let's just pull that down all the way to depreciation and just check it's picking up the right thing, which it is. Let's do a quick sum function on those just to work out how much they are. And then I'm going to work out my net profit, so it's going to be my gross profit minus the subtotal of my overheads, giving me 75,000. So that's step 1 done. So now let's have a go at doing B. So I need to work out what my contribution per unit, so that is going to be what I intend to sell it for less my costs. So I have a £40 contribution per unit, and then the number of units I need to sell to break even. So that's going to be my fixed costs divided by my contribution per unit, and that tells me how many units I need to sell to break even, 8,125, and now I need to work out my margin of safety. So just to remind you, your margin of safety in units is going to be your budgeted units minus your break-even units. So let's have a look here. So my budgeted units is 10,000 minus my break-even units, which I've just calculated there, and then I'm going to divide the whole thing by my budgeted units. Let's just make sure that the top part works properly. And I've also been asked to calculate that as a percentage, so let's just, there we go, there's my answer. Now moving on to C. Now remember, it's important to read the whole task before you have a go. So we've got to copy the data across and use formulas which link back to the original worksheet, will increase sales volume by 10% and average selling prices by 5%, and then set the print area. Let's go and do that. So we're going to copy all the data, go to revised and paste into A1, and then these two figures are going to be linked back, so I could just go equals to there. That's going to bring the figures in for me. However, we do need to make a change, so we said we were going to increase the sales volume by 10%. You can see all I did was I multiplied by 110%, and we're going to increase the sales price by 5%, so I'm just going to multiply by 105%. And because it specifically said to link them, I'm now happy that I've done that correctly up here. And then we've just got a different set of figures flowing through, and that's all we needed to do, except we just need to set the print area. So page layout, print area, set print area. Notice I highlighted it in advance. Right, that's C done. Let's go to the first part of D. We are looking at payback. So net cash flows, cumulative cash flows, and payback. And Mo requires a rate of return of 12%. And we also have to calculate the net present value. We'll return when we've done most of it. So moving to new premises, here's the table that we're going to pick values up from, and here are our cash inflows. We are told that the initial outlay of the premises is 260,000, and we can expect 18,200 annual costs moving forward. And we have to decide whether or not this is a viable proposition. So first of all, let's start with working out the net cash flow. So in the year 0, the net cash flow is going to start with an outlay of 260,000. Now what I think I'll probably do is go equals, and then I'm going to do 260,000. I'm just going to multiply that by -1 just to make it go negative. I doubt you'll be penalised for just typing -260,000. Now cumulative cash flow is always going to start with our year 0, and then moving from there it's going to be the previous value plus the current value, and that's going to follow us all the way down. That'll change obviously as we add figures in here. Now these are our cash inflows, but we want our net cash flow, so it's specifically net. So that's going to mean the difference between our net cash inflow here and the annual costs. So if I put an equals there, I'm going to say it's going to be year one cash inflow minus the annual cost above, and I'm going to use absolute on the annual cost, because when I drag that down I want to make sure it doesn't move off that one cell there. So if I drag down, and now I've got my my net cash flows and my cumulative cash flows have just caught up with me. Now we need to take the discount factor, and we were told that Mo's looking for a 12% return, so this is the information we're going to use here. So starting at year one, well actually let's just do this. So let's go equals, there's year one, and now let's just pull that down to match the other. So our discounted cash flow is going to be our net cash flow. So it's going to be our net cash flow multiplied by our discount factor. There we go. Okay. So now I need to work out what the payback period is. So for years, I can, if I look down my cumulative cash flow, I can see that I'm going to go into positive at some point in year 4. So I know it's going to be 4 whole years, but now I need to work out the months. There's a couple of ways you can do this. The way I normally do it is I say if we're going to bring in 63,800 throughout the year, I'm going to do equals 63,800 divided by 12. Right, that gives us how much we're going to bring in per month, and then I just do 37,300 divided by that figure. So let's just tweak my formula. I'm going to say 37,000 divided by the amount per month. Now obviously I've got a negative there because D21 is a negative, so I'm just going to just put a minus figure just to flip it round, and then I get my 7 months there. Now I need to work out my net present value, which is going to be just simply the sum of my discounted cash flows. It goes red automatically. That wasn't me, that must be already in the workbook. And then we have my net present value. Okay, now we need to use an if statement in cell C28 to say accept the proposal if the payback years is less than 5 and the net present value is positive. Otherwise, reject the proposal if only one of the conditions is met or neither of the conditions is met. Now this is a little knotty one, because actually what you have to do is essentially do an if statement on 2 values, which might not be something you're used to. There's a couple of ways you can do it. So let's start and do a basic if on this value. So years have to be what was it? I can't remember. Years was less than 4. Okay, less than 5, and the NPV needs to be positive. Well, we've got the less than 5, but we have not got a positive net present value. So you start off by saying if the years is, well actually no. Well, let me build it bit by bit. So if the years is less than less than 5, let's do this slowly, then accept the proposal, otherwise reject it. Oops, I missed out the word. Okay, that's quite simple, that one. But we've only done one part. Let's just prove that. So if we only take into account the years, it comes back as accept the proposal. However, we needed less than 5 and the a positive amount here. So what we have to do is we have to tweak this slightly by using the AND function. So if you just put AND in advance, and what that allows us to do is put multiple conditions. So I'm going to put a comma, So that's the syntax. You just put commas in between all the questions you need to be true. And then this one needs to be greater than 0. So you can see what I've done there. I've just pushed a little and statement into the first half of my question, and now we're getting reject proposal, which is what we expected. That's just a little hack you need to know. You could do a nested if as well, if you like, an if statement within an if statement. That will work as well if you're more comfortable doing that, and they will accept either of those two solutions. And that sees us finishing task 2.1. So now I have to make sure I save my workbook with the appropriate name, and I'm going to come back to the AAT exam environment and click on upload, which it won't let me do today, but in the real environment it will let me do today, and I'll upload my worksheet here. And then let's move on to question number 2. Or task 2.2. Now, it's worth noting I have already downloaded the assessment book and the instructions. There is another one here, the assessment data. Now, you would expect that when you click on this, for this to automatically download as a text file. I'm finding it isn't. This might just be me, but when I click on it, I just get I get the text file opened for me in the Surpass viewer. So what I did was I cheated and I just did a copy, and then I started Notepad, which is just that tiny little basic app in Windows, and I just pasted it in, and then I did a file save as, and I happen to know that's the name I'm going to come across later on, so I just saved it there, and that was my way of getting around it. And just remember that when additional windows open up in the Surpass viewer, they do so along the top, like in tabs, like browser tabs, so don't panic. Your exam will always be there on the leftmost tab, and I'm done with that one there. So yeah, so just be aware for task 2.2 you need to download an Excel workbook and a data file as well, like a TXT file. I called it comma delimited. So off we go. Let's start the Excel task. So just like task 2.1, the workbook gives me an assessment tasks worksheet in it, and it gives me instructions on exactly what I need to name my workbook here before I upload it. So do make sure you find that instruction. Now, as always, do read all the information that you've been given so that you understand the context in which you're working. So let's start with task A. In task A, I'm asked in the summary worksheet below, in column B, to construct a suitable formula to show the total quantity of each item held by linking to the appropriate inventory item in store 1, 2 and 3 worksheets. Then they need me to work out a total and freeze the rows. Now, on first glance, I thought this was going to be a VLOOKUP task, but from 3 separate sheets. Now, it's not out of the question that that could have been the case. I don't want to rule it out, but it didn't seem overly complicated. So I spent a little bit more time analysing the data that I'd been given, and noticed that the summary sheet and store 1, 2 and 3 are actually all identical headings in exactly the same order. They all start with a 10-drawer filing cabinet, and they all end with a red storage box all the way down. So then I realized that all I actually need to do is do a simple formula here that just adds those 3 values together. So starting with an equals, I'm just going to go to sheet store 1 and click, then press plus and go to store 2, plus, and then store 3 and enter. And now I have the total and then I'm just going to fill that down, and that means I've brought all the totals across. Don't worry about these little green triangles, they're to do with protection, and I can see later on that we have got to protect this sheet, so we can just completely ignore those for now. Okay, I've done that. So in column D, use formulas to calculate the total of each item and calculate an overall total in D76. Oops. So the total value is going to be the cost per item multiplied by the quantity. Draw that down, and then the total inventory value, if we just use our auto sum button. There we go. D3, is that correct? Yep, D3. Okay, that's done. Oh, and freeze rows 1 and 2. Okay, so if I need to freeze, so I go to row 3, highlight row 3, view, freeze panes, and then just check it's worked, which it has. So on to part B. An analysis is required of the value of the inventory that was bought from non-furniture suppliers, NFS. Produce a pivot chart and a pivot table in a new worksheet. Filter the pivot table to exclude the furniture supplier DJ Furniture. So the pivot table has to show what was bought from each of the 5 approved suppliers. So let's get that going. Keep doing that. So I'm just going to plonk my cursor down in my data and then insert a pivot table, and I'm going to do it on a new worksheet. And because we want to break down by supplier, I think for my rows I'm going to choose supplied by. There they all are. And what was it? Cost per item? No, total value. Okay, that's all right. Let's just change that, neaten that up a bit. Always do take a look at what you produce, because I can see I've got this weird blank coming in here. I wasn't expecting that. So I think what I've done is, I think my data source is slightly wrong. So I'm just going to click change data source here and have a look. Right, it's going all the way down to E70. Ah, look, yeah. Okay, it's picked up my total as well. And I don't want it to do that. So let's just back that off. Make sure it's just E75. Oh, that's better. Good, I'm happy with that. I was told to exclude the DJ. Let's have a look. Filter the pivot table to exclude the furniture supplier DJ. Okay, DJ Furniture. Lost my sheet. So I'm just going to I'm going to select DJ Furniture, right mouse click and choose Filter, and then choose Hide Selected Items. So that gets rid of DJ Furniture. I needed a pivot chart as well, so with my cursor sitting in my pivot table, I'm just going to go up to one of my, where are we, design, nope, oh here it is, I lost it for a second, pivot chart, and I need a pie chart. Let's just go and check, let's just cancel that for a second. Produce a pivot chart, change the chart to a 3D exploded pie. Okay, and add a title, total inventory value from non-furniture suppliers. Let me do that first while it's in my head. Okay, no, I haven't even got my chart yet, have I? So there we go, pivot chart. Right, they need an exploded pie. Now, exploded pie used to be an option, but I just can't find it, so I'm going to explode it myself. So I'm going to make sure I choose 3D. You might be able to correct me if you can find an exploded. And then I'm just going to pull the bits apart. That's an exploded 3D pie chart. All I did was you can pick on any one of the pieces of pie, click and drag and pull it away from the epicenter of the pie chart, and you get this exploded effect. Oh gosh, and then I had this. What was it? What was it? Total sales from non. I have a feeling I've got that wrong. Total inventory value from non-furniture suppliers. Close. Okay. Right. Anything else? I had to follow. No, I think I'm done. I'm done there. Right. So it says Kira wants you to ensure that whoever completes the summary worksheet can only use the approved suppliers from columns G in column E. So in the summary worksheet, apply data validation so that, okay, I'll stop reading. Let me just go ahead and do it. So what we need to do is use data validation on this information here in column E. So let's highlight that. Whoop, there we go. And then we're going to go to the data ribbon. Validation, there it is. And we're going to say this is going to be a list where the source is these values here, and the input messages, I think they've given us a very explicit. This is sometimes when it's useful to have the PDF open, because halfway through doing something you want to go and check the other sheet, because I can't remember what I had to write. Please choose from the drop down list. There we go. So my input message will be I can't put it in the title. Too much. Well, I won't put a title in. Please choose from the drop down list. And then they also said I need to put an appropriate error message. So error, I'll just repeat. There we go. Appears to be working. Yeah, let's just test it. Let's try and put some rubbish in and see what happens. Yeah, okay, that worked. Right, now I have to sort the data by supplier, and then using an appropriate function, subtotal the quantity for each supplier. Do not show a summary below the data. Okay, and then we need to password protect 3 cells with the password 123. Ooh, that's quite a lot. Let's just do this bit first. So sort data and then do the subtotals. So right now we appear to be sorted on item description. So let's go to, I'm still on my data ribbon. I'm going to go to sort, and I'm going to sort on supplied by A to Z. So that's job number 1, supplied by. Then I have to add subtotals. So I'm going to use the subtotal function, and I am going to, at each change in the supplier, I'm going to use the sum function to total up the total value. But they said do not use a summary below the data, so I'm just going to untick that. I think that's what I was supposed to do. And then finally I have to do cell protection on G3 to G7 with a password of 123. So let's do that now. So this is G3 to G7. I don't know if I've done that 100% right, because that's no longer G3 to G7. It's moved, but I think I'm pretty certain that is what it was supposed to be. Oh no, hang on. Okay, no, I've messed up slightly because I've ended up with this grand total up here. Give me a second, I'm just going to undo and redo my subtotals. Well, I've had a little play around with this, and I found that if I do my subtotal and I don't tick summary below data, I end up with a grand total up here and it pushes everything down. So I'm just going to leave it ticked. And at least then I've got G3 down to G7 in the right place. Sometimes you just have to make your best judgment. And then I'm going to apply protection. So all I do is I go to any of my expansion boxes and go to the protection sheet, and I should see locked on those, which is already there, so I'm not having to apply that. All I'm actually having to do is go into the review tab and go to protect sheet, and then I'm typing 123 as a password, and again 123, and that's my job down there. Now you can see I can click on all the other cells, but I cannot even click on those cells. So now I'm on to task D, and this is all about the extended trial balance, and it says some of the information has already been populated, however some of the figures were placed in a text file, and as a result some of the ledger balances are missing. And it goes on to say, using the data tab, import the text file title and load it into any cell in a new worksheet. Now this is where I started to have difficulties, so let's go and have a look what happens. So if we go to, it doesn't matter where you start this from because it's going to create a new sheet anyway. So if you go to data and then, well, you see data import doesn't exist anymore in this version. It behaves differently. So I'm just going to choose get from text CSV. And this is method 1. I'm going to show you 2 methods to bring this in. So there's my text file that I saved earlier when I did the download from the AAT website. I'm just going to highlight that and click import. And then what Excel does is it brings that in. It just click load. It'll bring in, it can see it's comma delimited, which it is. Then just click load. And it brings it all in like so. It brings it in a strange formatting called table formatting, which we don't really want, but it's just the way it works. So let's go and have a look at what we've got to do with this data. But firstly, I need to rename the worksheet to imported data, so let's just do that. I'm going to call it V1 because I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this. Okay. And then it says, using the cursor, highlight the data within the cells to copy and paste each of the amounts for purchases and wages into the relevant cells in the ledger balances of the ETB worksheet. Okay. Ooh, goodness me. So let's just take a look at the ETB worksheet then. Extended trial balance. Okay, so what we can see here is we've got some figures missing from our trial balance, our ledger balances. And if you look at the order they run in, so it goes purchases 1, 2, 3, shop wages grade 1 and 2. If we now have a look at the imported data we just brought in, it goes purchases 1, 2, 3, wages 1, 2. So in fact we're just basically copying and pasting this data. Now let's just check to see if we have to link to it or if we can just copy it. Oh yeah, no, copy and paste. Oh yeah, copy and paste, that's fine. So let's do that. Control copy and then ETB, and I'm going to just paste it on the debit side. Now I don't want it bringing any of that funny formatting across, so I'm just going to say paste values. This is when things started to go a bit kooky for me anyway, and what I found was some of it wasn't coming in as numbers, so anything that's left aligned isn't a number. You can soon tell if it's going to behave as a number or not, because if you put currency on it, you see it actually doesn't. I'm putting currency and nothing is happening, which tells me there's something wrong there, and I'll show you how to fix it in a minute. However, let's just finish. So we had to go and get the purchases and wages, and then we have to get the rent total and the rates total. So let's go and have a look there. So we don't want the individual ones, we just want the rent total. Control and copy. Control and paste. And I'm just going to repeat that. Rates total. Copy. Rates total. Oh, I should paste value. Whoops. Okay, only just because I didn't want that formatting to come in. Let me just format that. Okay, now one of the next instructions is format all currency cells to accounting style in whole numbers with no decimals. So it was at that point when I first noticed that there was a problem with this data that's come in. So what you do is you highlight everything, and then we go up to accounting style, and of course everything gets a little bit bigger, and then what we do is we'll just highlight all our columns and double click on any of those column partitions, and then we're just going to back off. Oops, come on, 2 decimal places please, Excel. It's not having a happy day today. Ooh, let's try that again. Accounting, thank you. Yep, so now you can see exactly what I've been talking about, how this data has come in, and even though we pasted values only, for some reason it's still not behaving like numbers. The only fix I have found for this is just to double click to edit and press enter. Double click, enter, all the way down. So for some reason this kicks it into action and then it behaves like numbers. And then I must just remember to knock back the decimal places. Okay, so that was method number 1, doing it strictly by the data import route of Excel. However, and there's another way of doing it which is probably a bit simpler. So what you can do is you can just open, so I'm going to File and Open, and I'm going to go off and look for that text file. Now when you do a file open, it will always look for Excel files only, so you've got to say look for all files, and there's our text file. And what it will do is it will kick off a little wizard that will say, well, this is delimited. How's it delimited? Well, it's commas, and then you just click finish, and it, oh no, I did that wrong. Whoops daisies, hang on, I didn't follow it through properly. Hang on a second. So let me just close that again. File, open, and then I have to click next, and I forgot to say that they're comma separated, not tab separated. If you look at the data file, you'll see that. And now if I finish, and it brings it in as a really pure text document or worksheet. There's nothing wrong with these figures at all. We don't have to fiddle around with them, and when we copy and paste these, they'll behave beautifully. And then what all you need to do is you just need to, well, you can either move the worksheet into your workbook, or you can simply, you know, just do a copy and a paste into your other workbook, into a new sheet, and it comes in beautifully that way. And then we could just rename that to imported data. Honestly, go with the way that you feel most comfortable with. Either will work, but I just wanted to make you aware of that weird thing that goes on. Okay, where were we? ETB. Fine. So we've done that bit and we've got these numbers in. So let's just go and have a look at what we need to do next. So now This extended trial balance was constructed badly by a person who has since left the business. The correct figure for the year, so I'm looking at the profit here, is 384890. Okay, let's just go and put that 384890. Let's go and put that into our ETB. I've forgotten it already. Hang on, so where we've got our profits. So on the statement of profit and loss, it's going to be a debit, 4890, and then we're going to repeat that onto our statement of financial position, like so. Okay. And then it says, as well as the ledger balance omissions which have been corrected in Part D, there were also 2 errors in the last 4 columns of the extended trial balance. Using relevant spreadsheet skills together with your accounting knowledge, locate the errors and correct them. Right, now there's a massive red flag for me here, because if you look, you've got 4 marks on offer here. You've probably already got 2 marks of those 4 by putting in the profit. So what we're about to do is possibly only worth 2 marks, and yet it could take so long. So I would only attempt this kind of thing unless it's screamingly obvious, and you've got loads of time. But otherwise, you know, I would not bother doing this because it could take you ages to find. Okay, let's have a go at trying to spot the errors. So what process would I go through? So let's have a look. Right, they balance. So they did say it was somewhere in the last 4 columns, and yes, you can see we haven't got a balanced situation here at the moment. So this is the thought process I go through. So the first thing I do is I find out the difference between the 2 columns, the 2 balances rather, 2 totals. And then I look to see if that number jumps out at me anywhere, which it doesn't. And then I halve that number. Because if something has been put on the wrong side, it will double the effect. Now, if you look, 2780, I can see 2780 there. And when I scan to the left, other payables accruals, it's on the wrong side. It's been put as a debit when it should have been put as a credit. Now all of these values over here, if I double click, you can see they've been brought across using equals. So what I need to do is I need to do the same. So I'll delete that, and then I'll put that on the correct side, and I'm hoping that's going to have, look at that. Right, so error number 1 found. So let's try the next thing again. Right, so let's go higher to lower. Okay, and then doesn't always work, but it's worth a go. No. Okay. Right, plan B. So the next thing I'll do is figure out, hang on, let's just have a quick look down here. So we've got sales, credit, yep, purchases, expenses, yep, depreciation, expense, cover, everything seems to be on the right side. So I wonder if there's something wrong with the actual construction of the spreadsheet. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to show my formula. Let's bring that down a bit. Just going to tighten up the view. Okay, and let's see if my formula gives me any clues. So everywhere I see an adjustment, I would expect to see a plus or a minus. So 2 debits are a plus, a debit and a credit would be a minus. Aha, look at that. I think that's where the error is. So you would expect, if that had been a debit, then it would have been a plus, but it's a credit, so it should be a minus. So sometimes looking at the formula like this, things can jump out of you. Okay, let's go out of formula view now. Oops, it's tightened everything up. Let's just spread it out. Look at that. That's lovely, isn't it? Now, oops. I will not lie to you. I've already done this exercise once, so therefore it was a little bit quicker for me to find it. But in the real exam, I'd just let those 2 marks go, unless you have available time. So that was my process, and then what I do is just get rid of those, and I believe that is my job done. Let's just go and double check. Yes, yeah, that's me done. So I make sure I save my workbook, and now I'm going to go back to the AAT environment, and I'm going to click on upload, and then I'm going to submit my assessment.